Well, it's my great pleasure, everyone, to introduce John. So if you'd like to just take it away, tell us all about your NDE and everything that's happened since.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm hoping that my experience will give all of you absolute hope and joy that it gave me when I first had it, that life doesn't end when we pass from this earth, that life here is just temporary. We are only here to learn, to experience, and to grow, but that it's not our real home. Our real home is on the other side. And that's where we go when we finish this lifetime. So I'm hoping to convey that, share with you everything that I saw, everything that I experienced. And please feel free to ask me any questions that any of you have along the way. I hope this will be a dialogue that we can answer questions back and forth as I go, because my experience was really unique in the world of near-death experiences. I don't know to this day why I had the experience that I did, being shown so much and being told so much about the other side. But I do know that it wasn't for me. It was to be shared and to given away to people, to give them hope and to let them know that there is so much more than we can physically see. So with that, I'll tell you what actually started, how this all happened. And basically I was driving a moped or a scooter, and I crashed into a tree. And I landed in such a way that I tore the tendons off my right hand, and I had to go in for surgery. So it was a real minor surgery, no expectations of complications of any way. So I go in on the day of the surgery, and this is the first time I had ever had surgery. I was 21, never had surgery before. And one thing I wanted to say, one caveat about this is, I know that this experience happened when I was 21, but for some reason, God has given me the ability to have 100% recall of everything that happened. So it was like it happened yesterday. That's how I remember everything. It wasn't like a dream that fades away with time. It is as concrete and as real as it was when it actually happened. And I can't explain that other than it's God just wanting me to be able to share it. So anyway, I never had surgery before. So the day of the surgery comes, and they give me the anesthesia to put me to sleep. And something happened, and I had an allergic reaction when the anesthesia hit my heart, and it stopped my heart. And I was dead for 7 minutes. And it was during this 7 minutes that something extraordinary happened. I was given a tour of a part of the other side. It was absolutely phenomenal. So the very first thing, and let me back up too and say that I was raised a Catholic. So I had had no real experience of anything like a near-death experience. I had never read about it before. I had never heard about it before. I had never heard about people dying, seeing things, and then coming back. So I had absolutely no reference point to that. And in fact, I'm very skeptical. I don't just believe things because someone says that, or I am I am more along the lines of the kind of person that wants to know for myself if it was real. But I can get into that in a little bit later. So anyway, as I'm lying there on the operating table and the anesthesia is going through my veins, my heart stops and my eyes close. The very next second, I woke up and I was standing in the most beautiful building I have ever seen. It was so beautiful, I could not even imagine something existing that was this beautiful. And my first thought was, how is it possible that the hospital can be this large? I had no idea what had happened. What I was looking at is I was standing up and I was looking down this corridor. Absolutely, it was so long that I could not see the end of it. It went for miles and miles. Off to the right of me, everything seemed to be made of marble, beautiful, white, pristine, perfect marble, just like you would see in Greece or Rome today, that kind of architecture. Off to my right, there were these columns, huge, tall, white marble columns, absolutely perfect. And they went all the way down, straight ahead, all the way down this column. To the left of these columns were beautiful white marble tables. And there were two people sitting at each one of these tables. And at the time, I didn't know anything that was going on, but I had my guide. I had a spirit guide named Alan. He said, "My name is Alan. I am your spirit guide." And he told me everything that I was seeing and experiencing. And again, I had no idea what a spirit guide even was. So as this whole process was unfolding, I was just listening to what he was telling me and going along with it. I wasn't thinking anything else. I was just going along with what was happening. So he was next to me on my left-hand side, talking into my ear and telling me what I was seeing. So anyway, there were these tables, beautiful marble tables that two people were sitting at. Each table, all the way down this long corridor, had two people. And here's the most remarkable thing. Next to these tables, there were the white columns. Then there were the tables. Then to the left of the tables, there were these doorways or tunnels. And they were absolutely beautiful. It looked like they were cut out of solid marble. They were perfect rectangular, just like a perfect rectangle is. And it was cut out of marble. And I found out that what these were the tunnels that we use to cross from the earth to the other side. Now, in my research, as I started to research after my experience, most people who have a near-death experience, they will get out of their bodies, They will be floating above their body. Then they will see a tunnel, and they will see the white light. Well, nobody, as far as I know, has ever been able to go into the white light and come back. Because once you cross into the white light, your lifetime is finished here and you can't go back. Well, for some reason, I was transported on the other side of that light. So when people cross into the light from the tunnel, they end up what is called the orientation center. And that's where I was. The orientation center is that building that I was in that had the white columns, the tables, and had these tunnels. The people that sit at these tables, they are called orientation counselors. That's their job on the other side. And my guide, he told me to look into the tunnel that was next to me. So I looked in the tunnel, and it was absolutely like looking into space. I could see galaxies and planets and stars. It was absolutely magical. It was beautiful. And he told me to look into the next tunnel, look up and look at the next tunnel. So, and these tunnels were about 5 or 6 feet apart, going all the way down. All this building were these tunnels, were these columns, were these tables. The whole building was the orientation center. That's what this whole building was all about. So I looked up, and a man was coming through this tunnel. And it turns out that when everybody finishes their lifetimes here on Earth, they go through the tunnel. And when they come out into the white light, they're in the orientation center. So the man I was watching, he was elderly. He was probably in his 80s or his 90s. And he had his right hand, and he was holding his left chest, like his chest hurt. And my guide said he had died from a heart attack. That's how he crossed over. Well, the minute that he crossed over and stepped through the tunnel, the woman who was sitting at the table, who I found out was an orientation counselor, she stood up, she walked up to him, she took his hands in hers, and she walked him back to the table and sat him down across from her. She held his hands the whole time she was talking to him. And at this point, I was too far away to hear what she was telling him, but I could see her mouth moving, and she was talking to him. And my guide again said, "Watch him carefully." So I watched him, and as she was talking to him, something extraordinary happened. He began changing from an elderly man who had lived a long life on Earth. He began changing to a man who was in his 30s. And I don't know why this is, but everybody on the other side is in their 30s. I don't know if it's because that's the perfect age, if that had anything to do with Jesus's lifetime, I don't know, but everyone is 30. So if you cross over as an older person, your natural state on the other side is to be in your 30s. So I watched him change. And as she was talking to him, he began to remember what had just happened. The reason that they have orientation counselors is because so many of us forget where we come from. We think that all there is life on Earth. We don't remember where we're come from. And that's by design. And again, I don't know how that works, but somehow when we come into a lifetime, our memories get suppressed so that we can live our life, test ourselves, learn lessons, accomplish our goals without the idea of remembering where we're really from. So as she was talking to him, he began to remember, oh yes, this is home. I just came from a lifetime. I lived that lifetime as an older man. I crossed over and I'm back on the other side now. And he changed. As soon as he changed back to his normal self in his 30s, he stood up as if saying, okay, thank you, I'm okay now. He stood up and he walked off to his right and he walked down 3 steps between, and each one of these tables has these steps between the columns going all the way down for every single person. Well, off to the right, they call this area the gardens. And they're called the gardens because they are the most beautiful, perfect gardens you could ever imagine. Beautiful green grass, trees, flowers, absolutely just picturesque type of garden. And what this is when a person finishes their lifetime and they go through that orientation, they go to the gardens for a reunion. All the people that they have ever lost in their lifetime are there. Family members, friends, people from other lifetimes, people they knew on the other side. Everybody is there to greet them. And it becomes this absolute huge celebration. People were applauding, people were hugging him, friends he had known, people who had crossed over were telling him what a great job you did. And I found out that it's a really big deal when you come to the earth plane because it's so hard here. There are many, many souls who don't want to come here because it's so hard. That's why when you get back and you finish your lifetime, all of these people welcome you back in what's called a reunion. And it was absolute, when I watched this, it was an absolutely joyous, happy event to have all these people there and to welcome you back from your lifetime. So that was the first part of my experience. My guide, Alan, he took me to these different places on the other side. And of course, it wasn't everything. The other side is huge. The other side is like a planet. It's gigantic. So he took me to a small area that's on the other side. But I learned a lot while I was there. And what he did is every time he took me to a new place, he showed me the outside of this building first. I know it sounds implausible, but there are buildings there. And the ones that I saw, the specific area that I saw was like a learning area on the other side, kind of like a college campus. And the buildings, all the buildings were designed in Greco-Roman style with the white marble columns, the beautiful marble, white, pristine surfaces. So everything he showed me, he took me to, showed me the outside first, then he took me to the inside. So the next thing he did, he took me to another building that was rectangular. And again, it had marble columns outside. And he took me on the inside. On the inside, looked like what we would say was a modern movie theater. The only difference was, instead of there being one screen, the whole top of this building had movie screens all the way around in a circle. And what I found out is this is where you go when you have your life review. Everybody, when they cross over from their lifetime and they go back home again, they have a life review. And that is to see if they accomplished the goals they set out for themselves. Did they learn what they wanted to learn? Did they develop the skills they wanted to develop? Did they experience the things they wanted to experience? And did they grow? And how did they learn? When I was standing there, all of a sudden, every one of these movie screens turned on. And what it was showing was different aspects of my lifetime. When I was a baby, when I was an infant, when I was an adolescent, when I started elementary school, all the years of going through elementary school showed up on these movie screens, and they were all playing at the same time. And it was like watching myself in a movie. And what I realized, somehow during our lifetimes, everything is recorded. Our lifetimes are recorded for us to go back and watch. And all I can think of is that is a God thing. I have no way of understanding how that happens, other than it's just something from God that allows us to see our lifetimes. So up until the age of 21, I saw every aspect of my life. And that's what happens when we have a life review. So my guide was showing me the buildings that we go to and the process that happens when we leave our lifetime and we have a life review. We see our lives, we hear conversations that we had, we see how we looked. And I could see myself as a little kid. I could see myself in junior high. I could see myself in high school during different episodes of that lifetime. It was extraordinary. So that was where we go when we have passed, or when we finish our lifetime and we go back for our life review. And all of us have life reviews. And they're not judgments. Nobody judges us. They're just simply done for the purpose of learning. We are kind of like what I like to call hardwired. Is like God hardwired us to be creations of learning. So we'd love to learn and we'd love to grow. There's no end of knowledge. Learning goes on forever, for eternity, because we are eternal beings. And we just like to learn. And the reason we have the life review is to see how we progressed, to see what we learned. So that becomes the part of our life or our experience when we get back from an earth life. Well, the next thing he took me to was a building that looked very similar. The outside of it was square again with columns around the outside. And it looked like and when we went inside, it looked again like a theater. But it was a theater with only one screen. And I don't know what a lot of your viewers believe, because I never believed this until I saw it for myself. But past lifetimes are real. We really do have past lifetimes. And so what my guide was showing me was that we have past lifetimes. And on this screen, he showed me 3 past lifetimes. And the first one was of a monk. I was a monk in a Tibetan or some kind of monastery, and I had a red robe on, and my job was to teach the kids about being a monk. Teach the kids, I don't know if it was, if the religion was Buddhism, I don't know, but my job was to teach the kids. So that was the first lifetime. The second lifetime he showed me was of a fisherman. I had a little boat and I had nets, and I would cast the nets into the water and catch fish. And that was my contribution to the town. I was a fisherman. And the third lifetime he showed me was a shoe peddler. I was a man that had a wheelbarrow. And in my town or community, my job was to fix people's shoes. So I would take this wheelbarrow around to people's homes. I would collect their shoes. I would go back to my little workshop. I would fix them and I would bring them back to them. That was my role in that town. And all I can explain about that is you don't look like yourself because you have different DNA, you have different parents, you have different genes, but you know when you're looking at yourself that that's you in a past lifetime. So he showed me that for the express purpose to let me know that past lifetimes are real. So that was the third building he took me to. The next place he took me to looked like a gigantic stadium, like a football stadium, but it was huge, bigger than a football stadium. So he took me on the inside, and there were thousands and thousands of seats all throughout the stadium. And what it was a planetarium. Do you know what a planetarium is? Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry. Yes, I believe so. You basically look up. I mean, it's a dome, and they have the stars artificially put up there. Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. I had been in one when I was a kid, but I had never been in one as an adult. So this building was a huge, enormous planetarium. And there was nobody there except for me. And this is the first time that there was someone else who spoke to me beside my guide. There was a gentleman behind me who seemed to be talking from what you would call the control panel of how to operate this planetarium. He was behind me and he said, "Let's begin." And all the lights went off. And I sat down and he said to me, "When you look at the stars, meaning people on Earth from our vantage point, when you look at the stars, this is what you see. And on the very top, our solar system showed up. Our sun, Uranus, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, all of our planets showed up as if to say, this is what you see when you look at the stars." Well, then that disappeared. And he said, when we look at the stars, meaning everybody on the other side, this is what we see. And all of a sudden, one planet after another started showing up. One planet, then 10, then 20, then hundreds, then thousands, then millions of different planets. Millions of them. They were blue, orange, yellow, green, brown, every color you could imagine. And he said, there is more life in the universe than you can possibly imagine. And this is where I realized that not only are we capable of having past lifetimes here on Earth, but we can have lifetimes on all these different planets all over the universe. And there are millions, absolutely billions of planets that God created for us to have lifetimes on. So Earth, our experience here on Earth, is only one example of all the different planets that are available. So that was probably one of my most favorite parts of my near-death experience, was him showing me all the different planets. Because I love astronomy. I love looking at the stars and the planets, and it's so unbelievably unlimitless that you just know in your heart that there is more to life than we possibly know about. So that was a wonderful experience, that part of the planetarium. The next thing he took me to was I don't even, it was a large rectangular building, and it was so large I couldn't see the end of it. It had white marble columns out front, huge, tall white marble columns, and it had steps, a whole bunch of steps leading up to the top to get into this building. And I didn't know what it was, of course. I didn't know what any of these buildings were until he took me inside. So he took me inside of this one, and this building was a library. It was absolutely enormous. There were bookshelves and books going down as far as you could see. And every kind of subject, every kind of topic was there. And again, on the other side, one of the things that we do is we love to learn. So there are libraries everywhere, places of learning, but this library was the largest. And somebody had told me one time that what they think I was seeing was called the Akashic Records, but I don't know. I don't know what that term means. They just said this might be what that building was called. So he was showing me the library. There were all kinds of people here. This was the first time in my experience where I could see different people, and they looked just like us. They had bodies, they had form, they were short, tall, every race, every ethnicity, and they were busy. They were talking at tables, they were visiting, they were studying. There was all kinds of activity. Well, off to the left of the library, they have these rooms, just like we have in libraries today. They have study rooms that are off to the side. And that's kind of what these rooms were like. So he took me to one of these rooms to show me what they were. And the one he took me to, they were about 15 feet by 15 feet. They were just not large, but they were rooms where you could study in. And there was a woman sitting there, and she had jet black, straight hair down to her waist. Her back was towards me, and she was sitting on a couch or a sofa of some kind. And she was watching what looked back then to me was a television set. But now when I look at it, when I think about it, it looked like a flat black or a flat back TV screen. And we didn't have those back in the 80s. So it was mounted on the wall, and she was watching. And my guide said, watch what she's watching. So I looked at what she was looking at, and what this girl was watching was a battle that was taking place between North American Native American Indians and the US cavalry. And I could see it as clear as day. And I was told that she was watching real history. She wanted to learn about that particular type of Earth's history. And I couldn't understand how it was possible for her to be watching something that had happened 200 years ago, because we didn't have video equipment, we didn't have recordings, we didn't have cameras back then. So how was it possible that she could be watching a battle that had really taken place? And that's when my guide told me everything is recorded. So these rooms that are off to the side of the library, you can go there, and anything that you want to watch in Earth's history, whether it was the invasion of Normandy or any event that happened in history, you can see it. And you can see it just as the people there saw it. And again, if you didn't have a lifetime during that period and you wanted to learn what it was like, you could go there. And that was absolutely phenomenal to me. It was kind of like, do you remember the television series Star Trek Next Generations?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
have the card and all those people. Do you remember when they had the holodeck?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they could program in the computer where they wanted to go, what they wanted to see. That is actually real on the other side. So not only do you have the ability to see it on a screen like this girl was watching, but you can actually step in to history. You can't interfere with it, and nobody can see you, but you can step in and see what it was like. One of the things I want to do is I want to go back and see what it was like during the Civil War. So one thing I want to do when I get back is go to the library and go into kind of this holodeck area and see what it was really like for these men to be fighting in the Civil War. And you can do that with any period of history. So you can see how busy people are on the other side. The people that I saw, everybody was busy. They were doing things, they were learning, they were being occupied. There are so many things you can do there. It blows your mind. You can hike, you can swim, you can write, you can paint, you can play instruments, you can go to music festivals. Anything that you do here that you love, you can do on the other side. You just don't have to work for a living. And that gets me to this next place. And again, the other side where I was all about learning. And so where he took me to was a place that you can go to on the other side if you want to see what the buildings looked like during a certain time of Earth's history. The place he took me to were the areas where they built castles during medieval Europe, England, France, Ireland. And the castles were perfect. And they were built just as they were built on Earth. They had the large stones, they had the circular stairways, they had everything that you've seen in pictures in castles. And again, all for the purpose of learning. So if you wanted to know what it was like to have a lifetime in medieval Europe and what these castles were like, you could go to this place on the other side and you could go into these castles and see what they were like. They were exact replicas of the castles on Earth. Well, here's the amazing thing about this. He showed me the outside of the castle, and then he took me inside, like all the other buildings. And off to the left and the right were these huge walls made of brick or made of rock, all solid polished rock, just perfect. And there were pictures on these walls. They were life-size pictures of the people that lived in that castle during that time period. So you walk in, and if you wanted to see what these people looked like, you could see their pictures and you could see what they dressed like, what their clothing style was. And in front of each, it's hard to explain, but try to imagine these pictures on these walls. And in front of the picture was a podium. And on top of the podium was a book. And each person had a podium and a book all the way down these pictures. And what these books were, they were a lifetime recording of that person. So if you wanted to go learn about the life of King George, for example, who lived in this castle for 75 years, his entire life was in that book. So you could go and read about him. You could read about the decisions he made, what kind of a king he was, were there wars, and in so detailed that you could actually see conversations. How in the world is it possible that a person's conversations can be recorded in a lifetime? And again, that's God. Somehow that's part of our existence, our experience. When we have a lifetime, everything gets recorded. Well, as I looked off to the right in this castle, there was a stairway, and it was a circular stairway of stone. And there was a woman walking down this stone stairway. And this was the first time that anybody that I realized could see me. She walked up to me. She had, again, she was in her 30s. She had strawberry blonde hair, wearing kind of a red gown. She walked up to me and she said, "Is there anything I can help you find?" And my guide told me that her job on the other side is to be a historian of that particular period of Earth's history. So if you were on the other side and you wanted to learn about medieval Europe on the Earth, you could go to this place on the other side and you could talk to people like this girl. She was like a scholar. What she loved more than anything was that style or that particular time of Earth's history. So anything you wanted to ask her about, she knew. And it was extraordinary. You could, and that's when I realized that jobs on the other side are different. You don't have to have a job to pay bills. You have jobs doing things that you absolutely love to do. Her whole passion was the medieval history on Earth. And she knew all about the kings, the queens, the political climate, what was happening with everything. And she was like a modern day scholar. So to me, that was just such an edification that learning goes on forever. Everything is there. Okay, so that was the castle experience. The next he took me to, again, was this building, but this one was different. This one, again, had white columns, but it was round. It was absolutely round, gigantic round building with a dome on top. And the columns went all the way around in a circle. It was enormous. And he took me inside. And for some reason, this is the building that we go to where we plan our future lifetimes. I don't know why. I think because everything was happening so quickly, he didn't have time to tell me everything. He just showed me a lot of the basics of what was going on. But this building was where you go before you come into plan a life on Earth. And you plan who your parents are going to be, you plan what country you're going to live in, you plan what language you're going to learn, you plan where you're going to go to school, you plan what your occupation is going to be, you plan goals for yourself, you plan challenges, you plan tests, and you basically write out everything that you want to learn from having that lifetime. Well, I found that out because he took me to a table that had two scrolls on it, and they looked like papyrus, just like Egyptian papyrus. And this is where you would write down on these scrolls what your lifetime was going to be about. So I took one of these scrolls and I unfolded it on the table, and I could see writing. It was black writing, and it was written in the form of calligraphy. Do you remember calligraphy when you had that pen and you had the little pool of ink, and you would dip your pen in the ink and you would write? That's what this writing looked like. So I knew that my lifetime was written on this scroll, and all of our lifetimes are written on these scrolls. And it's a way of planning what it is we want to accomplish. And we come back after our lifetime and we look at our scrolls again for the only reason to see if we learned what we came to learn. Well, when I tried to read the scroll, it folded up. And I knew that I wasn't allowed to read the scroll because you just aren't supposed to when you come into a lifetime, because that would affect the tests. You wanted to see how you would do without knowing about the other side. And so we come in without the knowledge of the other side to learn lessons. And something else that, again, I had never heard anything about this, but on the other side, God created all of us with a perfect mate. And they call them, and I know you've heard this term before, it's called soulmate. Well, soulmates are real. They're actually created at the same time we were to be our life mate through eternity. And how I know this is he took me to an area in this building. Again, it was huge. Everybody's books were there. Everybody has a book of their life, who they are, how many lifetimes they've had, what their goals have been, who they are as a soul, what their talents are. And they're all in these books, and they look like Encyclopedia Britannicas. They look kind of golden, kind of purplish. Beautiful looking books in these bookcases as far down as you can see. He took me to my soulmate's book. And you know how the binding on the back of a book will have writing on it? but the writing normally goes horizontal across the book. Well, with our soulmate books, the name of your soulmate goes down the back of the book, and it's in gold letters. And my soulmate's name was Nina, Nina, and I could see it. And every single book had the name of their soulmate. Just like if you were to walk into a library, you could take the book off the shelf. And the only reason you knew what it was because it had the name on it. And I don't know how to explain it, but when you're there on the other side, you just know who your soulmate is. And I didn't think to ask the question as to whether soulmates come into lifetimes with us. So I don't know if they do or not. All I know is that they're on the other side with us. So all of your friends, your loved ones, your family, children, people you've known past lifetimes, everyone's there, but you have one special person that's your life mate, and that's your soulmate. So that's what that building was. So that was every building that he took me to. The very last part of this experience, he took me to the most absolutely beautiful field I could ever imagine. It was like a field of flowers, every color of flowers and grasses and roaming hills. It was just beautiful. And he left. My guide left, and I was standing there. Nobody was around me. It was just me enjoying this beautiful wildflower meadow. And all of a sudden, a man showed up, a being. And he was different than the others. And it was Jesus. Nobody told me that. I just knew in my heart that this person was Jesus. And he was standing in front of me. And he had a white robe on, or a gown, with a gold sash around his belt. And he was wearing golden colored sandals that wrapped up along his calf muscles. And I could see his hands, his feet, I could see his robe, but I couldn't see his face. And this is where he was different. He had so much energy and so much light. It looked like lightning was coming out of his face. I couldn't see any of his features, but he spoke to me and he said, "You must tell them there is no death." And I knew what he was talking about. Every person in my lifetime, my job was to tell them that there is no death. That was your assignment. It wasn't like he was asking me to do this. It was like he was telling me, your job on the earth is to tell people what we've shown you and to tell people that there is no death. Well, as soon as he said that, it was like, boom, I was right back in the operating room where I was having the surgery. And again, I had no idea what had just happened. I had asked the doctor, what just happened? Thinking he might be able to explain what happened. But he said, we lost you. We lost you there for 7 minutes. So everything that they showed me about the other side was done in 7 minutes. But to me, it felt like I was there for an hour. It was absolutely remarkable. And it turns out that they don't have time there like we have time here. It's not the same. So all of that was done in 7 minutes. And so what I've been doing for my lifetime is just doing what he told me, is to share with people the things that I saw that day. And my greatest aspiration is that it gives people hope to know that people who have passed before you, whether it's your spouse or you've lost a child or some family member, that no one's really gone. They're just in a different place that you can't see until you finish your lifetime, and that we all go back. And the most extraordinary part was the feeling that you have of God. We don't feel God here on the earth. And I don't know why that is. I think one of the reasons that so many of us feel this soul aloneness is that we don't feel God. But on the other side, you can feel him. You can feel how much he loves you, how much he actually cherishes you as a creation, as a soul, as a child. And it's the absolute most beautiful feeling I have ever felt. When I first came back, I went through a horrible, horrible depression because I could not imagine being on this planet for years and years, knowing what happens when we cross and leave this life. I thought about suicide because I wanted to go back there so badly. But I learned over time that my job is to share what I saw, not to take my life, but to share it and to give it away so that people have that hope. And Angie, that was my whole experience. That was my near-death experience.
Wow. I don't know of anyone who's had such an extraordinary graphic experience, because in the sense of being guided from building to building to building in the way that you have you come across any other people who've had anything similar to it? We hear about the library, we hear about the Akashic records.
You know, I never have. All I've ever heard from people is the typical near-death experience where the person is at an accident scene or they're in the hospital and their soul gets above their body, that they're aware of the tunnel and they see the light, but someone comes down the tunnel, whether it's a loved one or someone they've known before, and tells them it's not their time yet, they have to go back. That's all I've ever heard. Don't know why my experience was so different, because I'm nobody. I don't have a podcast. I don't have a television show. I mean, if they wanted to show this to masses of people, they would just give the experience to Oprah. So I don't know why I was chosen to see what I saw. So all I've ever done is just tried to share what I saw to the best of my ability. And people have asked me, did you come back with any kind of gifts, any kind of unique abilities? And I didn't. But the only thing I came back with was a 100% recall of every single thing I saw. So maybe that was the gift that I was given. There's nothing, I've never forgotten any single thing that's ever happened over all these years.
Extraordinary. So you've really given us a wonderful blow-by-blow account, and we please feel free to start putting some questions in. Hands go up. Please please use the raise hand function if you can, so that way we can definitely see you. So the very first place, the orientation center, how interesting, where there are columns, the tables, the two people seated at every table, and then you've got the doorways. And as you very eloquently said, when people have the experience of passing to the other side, they're going to go through the tunnel, through the light, and then essentially, presumably, when they go through the light, they're coming into this orientation center.
Exactly. Exactly.
The man that you holding his chest, elderly gentleman, died of a heart attack, was sat down lovingly with the woman, and you saw them talk, you didn't hear what they were saying, but you saw him transform into this younger version of, of himself in his 30s when he was at his peak. Now, I have heard stories of people who've gone to the other side saying that when they encounter their parents or their grandparents, for example, they recognize who they are. They just intuitively know who they are, but everybody's looking fantastic. Everybody looks a certain age, possibly in the 30s.
Yes.
So that's sometimes definitely the case. And your guide, did you, the guide that you had with you, do you sense that that's a guide that's with you now, or was it
It's funny because the whole time that he was talking to me, I never actually looked over to see who was talking. Everything just happened so quickly. And he said, "My name is Alan. I'm your guide." And he has, as far as I know, he has been my guide for my entire lifetime. I don't have any psychic abilities, or I don't hear people, I don't see anything, so I don't know if he's still there. The only thing I've ever had happen to me besides that near-death experience was when my wife's dad died. And that was 7 years ago. And he came to me in a dream and he said, "Please tell my family I'm okay." And that was the last thing that's ever happened to me that was of a kind of a supernatural experience. So I know that he's okay on the other side and that he's fine.
Well, a question from Carmen here is, she's saying, thank you so much for sharing your profound story with us. Your guide, Alan, do you still have access to him? Are you communicating in any form in this earthly realm, this earthly domain? So you said he's still there.
Well, I talk to him all the time, especially while I'm driving, because I know when I was on the other side, they told me that the people who have crossed over ahead of us, they can hear us when we talk out loud to them. I don't know if they can hear us like when we pray. So I've always talked to them out loud. And I talk to my guide out loud, especially in the car. I asked him, "Can you help me with this particular situation? How am I doing with this? How can I help this person?" All these different things I talk to him about, but I never hear him. I don't have the ability to hear or see him, so I don't know. I'm sure he tries to talk to me, but the veil is so thick on our side, on the earth plane side, that many of us can't hear them. So I talk, but I can't hear them.
Do you, as opposed to hearing or seeing, do you ever have a sense of knowing after some time when you ask him? Does the answer come to you in some way, or do you find that you just never really get any kind of response?
I don't really get any kind of a response. It's possible that they try to talk to me in my dreams, but for years I have not been able to remember my dreams. And I think it's because I take medication to help me sleep. And I think that interferes with their ability to communicate with me.
It might do.
I have never gotten anything since then.
Right. We have a question from Tanya. You have to unmute yourself. You're still muted. I think maybe you're frozen. Go ahead.
Oh, right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, my question is, what happens when people kill themselves?
That's a really good question. I have had 2 people in my life take their lives. One of my best friends and what happens is people who take their lives, they are taken to healing centers on the other side where they are loved and counseled. There is no punishment of any kind. They're not sent anywhere. They're not punished. They are just given a tremendous amount of compassion and love and counseling.
Okay.
And sorry.
That's what I was told. They didn't show me the healing centers. I don't think there was time, but that's what they told me, that they're taken to these healing centers. Because when people take their lives, most of the time, very, very distraught and very lost, and they take into the healing center to care for them until they are back to
Okay.
nothing bad. There's no of them at all.
No.
Okay. Do you know of anyone who can tell me about my past life? Yes, there are quite a few therapists, if you will, or past life regression people or mediums that can, I believe, tell you about your past life. There's past life regression. In fact, we have Stephanie joining us today who does hypnosis and regresses people to past lives. Stephanie, would you like to say something?
Oh, yeah. So obviously during a hypnotherapy session, you can go into your different lifetimes. And I'm wondering if the person asking is asking someone can read, your past life. That would be a different type of situation, like a psychic or medium, or, someone who could see that. But so I guess you could get the 2 different types of experiences, but I think it's really helpful to go into a past life through hypnotherapy because you get to analyze, you're actually reliving it completely and you know who all the other people are. I just did one this morning actually with a client, and you have the person look into the eyes of the other and ask, do you know this soul as someone in your lifetime now? And I had taken this woman to the last day of the life and then leaving the body when you die, and she crossed over to the other side. This is what I do all the time with my clients, and she met with her husband who just died in March suddenly, and her husband they got to talk and reunite and talk about they have had 32 lifetimes together, and they're going to have more. So if you're really interested in past lives, I would recommend hypnotherapy over someone who could just read them and tell them to you, because that's going to have no real meaning to you to have somebody, I mean, maybe a little snippet of information, but to go into it in a lifetime in hypnotherapy, you get profound healing, especially if the therapist is, working on healing the trauma or anything that's happened in that lifetime. And it's always relevant to this lifetime. So it's highly valuable to do. It can be very therapeutic.
I absolutely agree with that, because do you remember when I told you that I was skeptical because I was raised a Catholic? I was so skeptical after my near-death experience that I went and saw just who you said. I went to see a hypnotherapist because I wanted to see if what I saw was real. And I was taken to different lifetimes.
Yeah.
And I was convinced, oh my gosh, it really was real. Past lifetimes really do exist.
So let me ask you, John, you shared with us that you saw 3 past lives when you were on the other side that were yours, the monk, the fisherman, and the shoe peddler. When you were then regressed, this is after your near-death experience, when you went to a hypnotherapist and you were regressed past life, was there any matching up of what you'd seen on the other side versus what you experienced when you were regressed?
Actually, they were different. They were different lifetimes. One was an Egyptian lifetime where I was a sheep herder. Another one was I was a somewhere in Asia, and I was a farmer, and I had a wife and 2 children. And the other lifetime that they showed me was one in Greece, where I owned some kind of a little shop back then. So the lifetimes were different. And that's when I realized that we have many, many, many lifetimes. And not only here, but lifetimes on other planets that we can also regress to.
Did you have any sense of the other planets? I mean, you mentioned, and I've heard this before from several other experiences, that people don't necessarily want to come to Earth, or if you do come to Earth, you're really applauded for it because it's one of the toughest experiences to have, because this is such a dense energy and we kill each other, we have diseases and natural disasters and gosh knows what else, right? So did you get any sense of what some of the other planets might be like when you were seeing all of them?
All I can tell you for sure is just like what you said, I agree with. The Earth is considered to be the hardest of all the planets because there is so much suffering here. This planet has wars, it has starvation, it has homelessness, it has mental illness, it has all kinds of challenges here. The other planets that I saw are already evolved past that. I could not see the details of these worlds because it was like looking at them from orbit. They were just showing me that all these other planets existed, but I wasn't close enough to see any other details or get a lot of specifics about what those planets were like. But I did learn that that is the reason Earth is such a big deal, because it is the dark planet. So much happens here that is not revolved around helping humanity. There's a tremendous amount of people who try to make who try to make a difference in the world. And that's one of the reasons why we're here also. We're here to learn and to grow, but we're also here to help each other get through this world and to make it better. So this world is in a process of trying to become better, to evolve. And we've come a long way from even 200 years ago, but we're still evolving. And that's why this world, that's why so many don't want to come here, because it's too hard. They don't want to experience it. And for the very reason that I forgot that girl's name who asked about the suicide, I have people, particularly mothers, who write me and ask me about their children because their sons committed suicide. They want to know what happened to them. Are they being punished? Are they in trouble? What's happening to them? And of course they aren't. They're being loved and taken care of and made whole again.
Do you believe that they come back because you don't escape, as it were, what you set up for yourself? Do you feel that they will come back in some way to try to relive, try again some of the challenges that they set up for themselves?
That I don't know. I do know that we are not forced to come into a lifetime. We have absolute free will as to when we want to come into a life, and we do it because we want to learn and experience and grow. But they didn't tell me anything about if suicides have to come back or not. And it's a huge problem, because I was reading in the year 2020, 800,000 people took their lives on the earth. That's almost 1 million people. So it's a huge, huge problem. But they didn't tell me if they have to come back. That I just don't know.
When you had your life review, they talk about the classic stories about feeling when you're seeing your life review, you felt how you made other people feel at the time, good and bad. Did you have that experience?
No, I didn't. I don't. I think it's because I didn't have time. I know that when I was in that building where they do the past life review, I mean, when they do your life review, you can feel everything. I felt what it was like to be that age again. To be that age, I could see myself playing soccer. I could see myself in classrooms, in school. I could see myself on field trips, on vacations, doing things with my family, doing things with friends. I could feel what that felt like and what it felt like back then. But I didn't see any experiences of what other people made me feel like, or what I made others feel like. I think just because there wasn't enough time. But I have heard that too. And I have no reason to doubt that that's not real.
Right. We have a question here from Eva. How did your experience impact your religious beliefs? For example, Catholicism doesn't believe in reincarnation.
Yeah, all of that changed. I still believe in Jesus. I believe in what his life purpose was to teach people love and to teach non-judgment. But I'm not a Christian. I don't really associate with Catholicism anymore. I don't have a specific religion. I'm more spiritual. I believe in Jesus's teachings. In fact, I still read the Bible a couple times a night just because I love the New Testament. But I don't prescribe to the fact that there is only one way to God. When I met Jesus in that field, I got the feeling from him that he was my best friend. He's all of our best friends. And I did not get the feeling from him that there was only one religion. In fact, I got from him that any religion you follow that brings you closer to God is the right one for you, that there isn't a wrong one. They're all of them can lead you on a path to God. And that's what they're most concerned with, leading back to God. Hey, Angie, my phone, I have to apologize. My phone is about to die.
Okay. Do you have can you have some more questions? Can you recharge, or are you telling us that we have to end?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll keep talking. I'm not at a point now where I can.
If you want to take a second and go and get if that's convenient, if you want to do that, we can hold on for a second if you like.
Okay, give me just a second. I'll be right back.
And please keep your questions coming, guys. We can still work to the top of the hour. This is just such a unique opportunity to be talking to John with his extraordinary recall of the other side. I have to say, this is the first experiencer that we've interviewed in the history of our chapter who has this kind of recollection of the other side. I think, Tanya, you're getting ready to ask a question. If you could unmute. And thank you so much, Stephanie, for speaking up and telling us about the past life of.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. And if anybody wants, you know, I do the sessions over the phone, and my website is stephaniecraft.com.
Yeah, Stephanie Craft. Let me actually write that in the text, stephaniecraft.com. Okay, John, are you back?
I do leave though in 15 minutes, so we have time.
You have 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Tanya, if you have a question, would you like to step in?
Yeah. Sorry, I've got a similar problem to John. Can you? Yeah, I've got to recharge and I can't reach over. No, never mind. Okay, my question is, when our lives are recorded. Sorry, the video keeps going. You'll just have to listen to my voice. Can our thoughts be read?
I don't know that. I just know that when I was in that building, the castle, where I was looking at those books of those people who lived those lifetimes as royalty, that everything in their life was recorded, even conversations that they had. And it was just, you could spend days and days reading their lives. And our lifetimes are the same. When I had my life view in the building where they had the circular screens, and you could see every aspect of your lives, your ages, the different time periods, I knew everything. The feelings had come back, the learnings that I had come back. But I don't know if you're able to hear people's thoughts. That wasn't told to me, so I don't really know.
Interesting, though, that you were told that if you speak to people who have passed, that they can hear our thoughts. Did you not say something similar to that?
Yeah, I don't know if they can hear our thoughts, but they can hear us when we talk out loud to them.
Right, right. I would, if I had to place a bet, I would imagine that they can hear our thoughts.
You know what? You're probably right. One thing they told me is that, and I don't know if I can describe this very well, but there is a veil. There is a veil that separates the earth plane from the other side. And the veil that is on the other side is very, very thin. And they can see us. They can come through, they can see us. Anytime they want to visit us, they can. They're around us all the time. But on our side of the veil, on the earth side, it's very, very thick. And I don't know why that is, but that's why we don't have the ability to see them or to communicate with them, because it's so thick. But on their side, they can. That's why people always ask, well, can my loved ones, can they come around us? Absolutely. They can come around us all the time, and they do.
We have a question from Linda. Linda A, if you'd like to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question about your soulmate book and whether you've had any experiences or insights about Nina.
You know what? I never have. I didn't even know that soulmates existed. And the reason that my guide took me to that place on the other side was because he wanted me to tell people that soulmates are real, because a lot of times people on the earth don't come in all the time to have a wonderful, loving, fantastic relationship with someone for their lifetimes. They don't always do that. If that's what they wanted, they would never have left the other side in the first place. So you come into life many times not finding that perfect mate because your mate's on the other side. But the only time I ever saw anything about Nina was when I looked at her book. And it was such an amazing experience to see that, because it was in gold letters and it was going down. Everybody's soulmate name goes down from the top to the bottom of the book. So you walk in the libraries, you just know the name of your soulmate when you're there, and you can walk and see their book. So it was just incredible.
Interesting, because I believe in past life, people aren't always the same gender. It sounds as though you were the same gender. You were a male in the past lives that you've been exposed to, the 6 that you told us about. I'm just wondering, because our gender can change, not to male, you're talking about a female soulmate. What if you had been female in a couple of other lifetimes? Would you still be, is this soulmate regardless of the gender that you are? I'm just trying to understand that. Does gender have to do with it?
From my knowledge, God created us all at the same time as male or female. And we do take on different sexes in different lifetimes to get the whole experience. So I know that your soulmate is based on who you were when you were created. But if you come into a life and you're intrinsically a male, but you come into experience a female lifetime, you might be attracted to females, or you might be attracted to males. It just depends if there's a bleed through that comes through from the other side. But I don't know. I just know that you do have a soulmate. It's with you for eternity. It's your life mate.
Now, presumably when you went to the other side, you were on the heavenly plane, and there were a lot of people having a lot of experiences, a lot of knowledge. It sounds as though a lot of the knowledge perhaps was based on the human experience of Earth, because you talked about the young woman who was a historian on medieval literature, that kind of thing. But do you think that you went to that particular plane because you had you were having an earthly experience? Do you think if you were having an experience on another planet, perhaps the heaven equivalent would be different?
You know what? That is something I have thought about a lot. And I don't know if every planet has its own other side. That I don't know. But I would suspect on the other side of every planet, they would have the same thing that the Earth has in terms of history. All the history of that planet is on that other side. So you can learn and experience, because you won't have the opportunity to live, to have a lifetime in every typical period of that planet's history. You just don't have enough time between lifetimes.
What if people don't actually want to go and have another lifetime? They just want to be in that heavenly realm. Do you think they have the choice? After having lived many, many different lifetimes, they can actually just say, okay, that's enough. I just want to take a break. I just want to stay here for as long as I can.
Absolutely. Nobody makes you come in for any reason. People do it just because they want to learn. And if you have had 100 lifetimes and you say, you know what, I am done with the earth, I do not want to come back here again, you don't have to. You can take those experiences and learn just from that. You don't have to have a lifetime anywhere else. You can stay on the other side for eternity. That's what God made for us. That's our real home. That's our true existence. All of the earths, or all the earth plane and the other planets, those aren't the real lifetimes. Our real lifetime is on the other side. That's where we spend eternity.
Do you have any sense of hell? Some people have near-death experiences that are hellish. Did you ever glimpse anything on the other side that where if people are not ready to go to that realm, or they choose to accept the creator, as it were, or source, that perhaps they're relegated to another place because you have to be at a certain vibrational level to be there in the first place?
What I can tell you when I was there was the feeling that I had from God. And this being that we call God is so much love that I can't imagine him creating a place like the biblical hell. I just didn't get the impression that he would create his children with the idea of someday having a mass judgment and casting them into hell. So I don't think he's capable of creating such a place. But there are lower levels to the other side. I didn't see very much of this. I just know that it's real, that there are souls, for whatever reason, have turned their backs on God. And God created us with free will. He would love us all to love him. But that's one of the reasons he gave us free will, so that we could choose. Well, there are souls that have turned to the dark side, kind of like a metaphor from Star Wars. There are souls that have turned their back from God, and for whatever reason, they choose to live their life in a manner where God is not present. And the levels that I believe that people sometimes see on the other side when they have these near-death experiences, where they go to the lower levels, where they experience other people, other souls who do not want to be part of God's light, and they've turned away. And those places, I have heard, because it's all based on thought, can be very hellish and very scary. But they are created by those souls, not created by God. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. And of course, if you refuse to accept that source exists and you want to be separate from source, I guess you would end up in a place that has no source.
Correct.
Be a place void of love and light.
Yeah, it's separate from God.
So you literally draining God out, pulling God out of whatever existence, and then be left with that, which is probably all the negativity. Perhaps that's what hell is the lack of God being there.
I agree. I agree.
Right.
Andrea, I gotta go. I have another call I gotta take.
Well, we want to thank you so very much, guys. If you want to stay on for just a moment, I know that John has. Just want to say a very, very big thank you to you. Very, very best of luck, and God bless you. It's a wonderful, wonderful story that you're sharing with, experience that you're sharing with us. Thank you.
I hope, it's my greatest hope, that it was able to give you that hope that life goes on, that there is so much more to our lives here, and there's a purpose, and that there's a God who loves us tremendously, and that when we finish our lifetimes, we absolutely go back to paradise.
Absolutely.
And with that, I gotta go. I will see you all. Talk to you soon. Thank you for the question.
So thank you. You want to stay on for a couple of minutes and just talk a little bit about what you heard John say, because there's a lot there to unpack. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We have a couple more minutes before the top of the hour. Tanya.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I don't think, you know, you need to discover hell on the other side. I think it exists here on this planet because people have choices to make while they're here on this planet, and people choose the dark side here. So we can experience hell and heaven while we're here, you know. But a question I wanted to ask him was, because I always have this feeling that, you know, I might come back not as a human, I might come back as another sentient being, you know, a different form of energy. And I wanted to ask him about that, but he's gone now.
Well, what do you think, guys? I mean, considering he was shown all the different planets and all the different types of life that exists in the universe, and it sounds as though it's really up to us if we want to have those experiences. I think you could choose to come back as any of what's out there, any of what's already available. What do you think? I think she's frozen there. Hopefully we can get her back. Anybody else want to share what you got from that presentation? No? Tanya, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
So my point was, I think you could come back as another type of sentient being if you chose to. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
No more questions. I want to thank everybody for joining. Oh, yes. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Steve. Just a quick comment. Google the Buddhist 6 realms of existence. And it's an interesting reading of how Buddhists see the upper realms and the lower realms that you can be in.
So can you tell us a little bit about that? Anybody know much about Buddhism then? Please.
You've got the upper realms are, I mean, the top one is nirvana, which is absolute bliss and contentment. But you're basically using up your positive karma, and you will eventually go back to a lower realm. Then there's the human realm, and there's the, I forget, they're like the people who can never get enough. You know, they want to be gods, but they're not. And then the lower realms are the animal realm, where Tanya might well choose to be reborn in the animal realm. And then there's the hell realm. And the hell realm, you create it for yourself. And then there's the hungry ghost realm, which are the wandering souls who never did anything to help anybody. And so they don't go to any other realm. They just wander around suffering. And Buddhists in Vietnam do special prayers once a year to make offerings for these poor things that they might be lucky enough to be reborn again. That's it in a nutshell, but it's worthwhile, you know, Googling it and looking it up.
Linda has a question.
I don't have a question, but I have a couple of comments. One is that if one did go and come back as a sentient being, so-called lower, one would not be able to communicate that to the rest of us. But since cats and dogs don't really talk, and I do know from following Suzanne Giesman very closely that cats and dogs do come back to their owners, and they have relationships with them if the animal is on the other side. And as the speaker was talking, I kept thinking about some of the things that I've learned from Geisman. So if anybody doesn't know who she is, she's worth looking up on YouTube, because she channels. And although I really had no belief in or interest in people channeling, because it seemed very strange, there's no question to me when she is channeling that indeed higher beings are talking through her. And so a lot of the things he was saying, I've heard her intimate, although she has not had a near-death experience, but certainly with her ability to talk to be the not the channel, but the telephone almost from somebody who, from your loved one. She is able to let us know that they are here. They observe what we do, and when we want to talk to them, we can. And indeed, there's no reason to talk out loud. that they do know our thoughts, and we can have conversations with them. So that's just a little a bit that I was thinking about as I heard him. And thank you for working this out.
For those of you who know about Dolores Cannon, some of you may have heard of her, some of you may not have. She's now passed. She died in 2014, but she was a very effective past life regression hypnotherapist. But what was interesting about Dolores's work, she wrote many books, was that she had a special technique for regressing people really quite far back. And a lot of what came through, she would be tapping into what seemed to be a universal voice, as it were, as opposed to the individual, and be getting some truths. And then what she found is it didn't matter who she hypnotized, she was able to tap into this universal voice. And the universal voice was able to sort of give her lots of messages. And then she wrote about, the third, I forget exactly, but this new Earth that's coming, and the 3 generations or 3 waves of beings that are coming, etc. But one of the things that she did talk about was the libraries on the other side, and the Akashic records, and some of these places that John alluded to. She has been able to come across that information. So I thought that was interesting, because there's a little bit of cross-referencing there that's taking place, where you actually hear one person tell their story, and then somebody else, through some other means, is saying something very similar. So that helps sort of create this picture as a whole. Very good. Steve, I think, has sent us a link there for looking at kind of Buddhist, the Buddhist journey. But unless anybody else wants to add anything, I think we'll just go ahead and ring off. I just want to thank everybody for your attendance today. I thought that was a really interesting near-death experience, and I appreciate it. Any last questions? Otherwise, we can just ring off, and we'll see you, God willing. I think it's the 24th of July, but it's about 6 weeks from now is when we're going to have Dr. Alison Snowden on. So with that, I think I'm just going to say farewell to everybody. Enjoy your summer. Thank you so much for joining us, and take good care. Bye-bye. Bye.